LRBT2, Flaw, question 8. So we have Kim and Lee, they're responding to one another, and we're going to see how exactly does Lee respond to Kim. And Lee is actually what we get from our question. Lee is criticizing Kim. So we're going to see how exactly. So Kim says that there's a change in attitude in the 18th century in Northern Europe. And then we're talking about death rites, less solemn and elaborate death rites. So basically, before this change, the attitude was or more solemn, um, less solemn and elaborate, maybe less elaborate. So we had more solemn and more elaborate death rites. So, much more depressing, much more intricate, complicated. Then there's a change in attitude, gets less solemn, so a little bit happier, less elaborate, more simple. Um, and Kim is saying that this comes with a change in view. There's more optimism with respect to the human condition as articulated by the philosophers. So basically, philosophers are getting more positive as to how they see the human condition. And so with that, there's these changes in death rites. They're less depressing and less complicated. And so Kim says this change is explained by, the result of a dramatic increase in life expectancy. So basically people are living longer, and that explains why philosophers have a change in view. And that was occurring in the early 18th century. So the fact that that happened in the early 18th century led to the change in attitude during the 18th century. Okay, so that's Kim. Kim is like, okay, people are starting to live more, people are happier. Great. Lee responds saying, yeah, no, this explanation is unlikely because it could not be correct unless the people of the time were aware that their life expectancy had increased. Basically, Lee says, yeah, I don't think so, because people would have to know that they were living longer. What Lee does here is Lee points out the necessary assumption in Kim's argument. Necessary because there's something that Kim has to take and assume, like in order for their argument to be full. And unless indicates that necessity of that assumption. It could not be correct unless. If we don't have that unless part, Kim's argument would fall apart. It's got flaws. So Lee's got some issues with the argument, and they're really pointing this out. So now let's go through the questions and see what exactly is Lee doing in criticizing Kim's explanation. If we were looking for something really quickly, we're looking for something that says that he's pointing out a necessary assumption. And, the fact that we're pointing out this assumption, Lee doesn't like it. There must be an issue with this assumption. So we're going to go ahead and look through our answer choices. A, it refers to sources of additional data that cannot be easily be reconciled with the facts Kim cites. So Lee isn't pointing out that there's additional sources of data that cannot be easily reconciled. Kim's got a lot of data, and Lee is saying, hey, people need to know this thing. Kim is not saying that there's additional data, and Kim's not pointing out this discrepancy at all. Possible, but it's not going to hurt our argument, and it's just not what happens here. B, it offers an alternative explanation that is equally supported by the evidence Kim cites. So Kim doesn't give an alternative explanation. Kim just says, yeah, no, I don't like this explanation because this is what it assumes. C, it cites an analogous case in which Kim's explanation clearly cannot hold. There's no analogous case here. D, it suggests that Kim's explanation depends on a questionable assumption. Well, there's an assumption in there, and it's questionable. We like that because, let's say people were not aware their life expectancy increased. That's an assumption that then becomes questionable. Questionable just means it might not be 100% wrong or right, but we don't have it for sure. So D is looking a really nice answer. E, it points out that Kim's explanation is based on two hypotheses that contradict each other. I don't know about you, but I don't see two hypotheses. And we're not talking about any contradictions. Lee is just like, hey, this is what your argument depends on. So D is going to be the best answer choice here because it's just really simple. Kim had an assumption that Lee pointed out, and Lee just demonstrated, like, hey, here's this assumption. And we can tell that, it might be true, it might not be, but the fact that we have no idea which one it is means that it's questionable.